Usher, thank you for listening to the Station of the Cross, proclaiming the fullness of truth with clarity and charity.
Heard around the world on your Android and Apple mobile devices.
The Simple Truth, rising up to explore the difficult topics of real life. Join us as we proclaim the good, the true, and the beautiful with the simple truth of Jesus Christ and His Holy Catholic Church through Scripture, tradition, and the Catechism. And now, your host, Jim Havens.
Great to be back with you on The Simple Truth, where we proclaim the life-giving reality of Jesus and His Catholic Church. We consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong heart of St. Joseph. It is Current Events Wednesday, and our guest today is Dr. Jennifer Roback Morse, founder and president of the Ruth Institute, ruthinstitute.org, and host of the upcoming 4th Annual Summit for Survivors of the Sexual Revolution. This year's theme, Reclaiming the Professions for Life and Family, the weekend of July 16th through 17th, coming up quick. She's also the author of The Sexual State, How Elite Ideologies Are Destroying Lives. Dr. Morse, thank you for being back with us today. How are you?
I'm doing great, Jim. I'm glad to be with you. It's really exciting to see you again.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, thank you so much. And, first, as we talk about current events today, we always set it up this way. We want to always remember that the number one news story is going unreported by the news media today and every day, and that is the ongoing daily government-sanctioned, government-protected, government-funded mass murder of innocent children in the wombs of their mothers. These are real people being murdered by the thousands today and every day in our nation, which also means the mass exploitation of pregnant moms in need for profit by the lie of abortion. In terms of the loss of human life, we're talking about at least a 9/11 every day in the U.S. Can you imagine if 3,000 of any other category of people were being murdered in a given day in our nation and it was going unreported by the media and even by and large ignored by the churches? Imagine if that was happening every day, and you begin to get the sense of the insane reality in which we find ourselves. It is essential that we put great effort into breaking through our own desensitization to this massive evil. We have to face reality on this and so much more. For those who believe in Jesus and His Catholic Church, we have the additional benefit of crystal clear, authoritative magisterial teaching on this, which truly gives us no place to hide in treating those in the womb as less valuable than us. Catechism of the Catholic Church 2270, human life must be respected and protected absolutely from the moment of conception, meaning fertilization. From the first moment of his existence, a human being must be recognized as having the rights of a person, among which is the inviolable right of every innocent human being to life. Also, if you've experienced abortion in some way as a mother, father, sibling, grandparent, etc., there are some great people and resources available to help you in your healing process. We love you. You are not alone. Go to lovewillendchildkilling.com and click on the healing tab for more information. Dr. Morse, how do you view this reality I'm painting here, this ongoing daily mass murder of abortion in our nation and in our world, in relation to the Ruth Institute, which you founded and are president of, and its dream that every child be welcomed into life in a loving home with their own mother and father married to each other?
Well, Jim, that's a great tee-up that you just gave, not only to the work of the Ruth Institute, but also to the very summit that we're going to have in a couple of weeks in Lake Charles, Louisiana, July 16th and 17th. Because the fact that the news media don't report this is a disgrace, right? And when people look back on this 100 years from now, they're going to say, what the heck were these people thinking? You know, where were the reporters? Where was the anger? Where was the angst? You know, and people were going to think, what were they thinking? You know, they've lost their minds. You know, they all lost their minds. And so that's one of the issues that we're definitely going to be covering at the summit, is what we call the corruption of the professions, right? Because what this is really showing, Jim, is that the news media is desensitized to this. In fact, the news media is complicit in hiding what is going on, in redefining what is going on, putting different labels on it so it's not so bad. Likewise, the medical profession is gravely complicit in what is going on by redefining life, pretending they don't know when life begins. These type of things that are going on in the medical profession. We have now the spectacle of the major medical association, the American Medical Association, on record supporting transgenderism, literally saying that they support a policy whereby the sex assigned at birth of a baby is not made a public document because that might limit the person in their future choice of sexual expression. Okay, so in other words, the doctors in our society have bought into the idea that the sex of the body is something that is negotiable, right? So the professions themselves have been corrupted by the ideology of the sexual revolution, and what abortion represents is, in a sense, it's the most visible aspect of the evil of the sexual revolution, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that leads up to abortion, and there are a whole bunch of things that flow from the legalized killing that you're talking about, And so we at the Ruth Institute, we try to deal with a whole spectrum of issues that are either complicit or resulting from the abortion holocaust. So all of these things fit together very well for you and your mission, and for, I presume, what all of your listeners and viewers are interested in too.
All right, we've got to get to the truth of things and get back to living the truth of things, the good, the true, and the beautiful. So tell us more about the Ruth Institute Survivors Summit, Reclaiming the Professions for Life and Family. Again, coming up July 16th through 17th in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Also billed as the premier event for leaders, activists, and professionals fighting the sexual revolution. Give us all the details. I want to make sure to get that out, certainly at the top of the show, and as often as we can throughout. We want to get people signed up for this. You need to come to this. RuthInstitute.org is where you go. So share some of the details with the folks, what they would need to know about this.
So I'll tell you what we're doing. There are three parts to the event. Okay, the kind of core event, you could say, is the awards dinner on Friday night, July 16th. We'll be giving out awards to three people that we think deserve it, three people that are really outstanding people. Reverend Walter Hoy, whom you know, Jim, who's a great pro-life hero. We're going to give him an award as the Public Witness of the Year. This is a man who is a pastor, a Baptist pastor from Oakland, California, who ended up in jail for 30 days for his pro-life witness. And so, and he's African American. So he'll be talking about his experience in jail. He'll also, later in the summit, be talking about what abortion and what the sexual revolution has done to the Black community, which I think is a very important topic. So Friday night is the awards dinner. Leading up to Friday night, for people who get there early, we have what we call the Ambassadors Program, where we give the full core teaching of the Ruth Institute all day Friday, just the basic principles that undergird our thinking about how all the issues of the sexual revolution really fit together. It's not transgenderism over here, homosexuality over there, contraception here, abortion there. It's all one giant issue. And the one giant issue is, what is the place of human sexuality in our lives? That's what we'll be talking about during the day Friday. Then all day Saturday is the summit proper, the summit for survivors of the sexual revolution. And that will be a whole series of rapid fire presentations. I think we've got almost 20 speakers, coming together on a variety of topics that have to do with two things. One is reclaiming the professions, and the second is equipping pro-life leaders to deal with the transgender issue, because the transgender issue is becoming more and more present for the pro-life movement, for your sidewalk counselors. It's everywhere. When I talk to pro-life leaders who are sitting at their desks, they don't know about it. But as soon as you talk to a sidewalk counselor, they're like, oh my gosh, every day we're seeing these kids come in wanting cross-sex hormones. We don't know what to say to them. We don't know how to deal with them, So we've created a pamphlet. We've got a whole team of people with various kinds of expertise. So if this is something you're encountering as a sidewalk counselor, you really need to be there. You should be there in the room. And if you can't get there in time, if it's too late to get your airplane tickets, or you live too far away to drive, or whatever it is, you want to zoom in virtually, that's also possible as well. Not as good, right? Because you want to be in there pressing the flesh and meeting everybody and, making friends and all that. But still, the material itself will be available virtually and online. So we're very excited about it. Tremendous group of people coming to speak on these topics.
And does that include the virtual option? Certainly, again, it is ideal to be there in person, but if someone can only be a part of the virtual option, which is certainly much better than nothing, is that also available for the ambassadors program, or do you have to physically be there? Because I know there's an application process for that.
Right. Yeah, we would like to know if you're planning. I'm pretty sure we want to know who you are if you want to zoom in for the ambassadors program. But if you've come through Jim Havens, we'll probably sweep you right through that application process, because we don't want everybody to know everything we're doing. But that's okay. If you can be there, one of the reasons we kind of opened it up a little bit is we've got people zooming in from around the world. We'll have some people coming from a seminary in Rome who are going to be, professors and students alike, I think, are going to be part of it. And I don't know how they're going to work the time zone thing, but they'll figure it out. We've got some people from Africa who have signed up. We've got a lady from the Caribbean, a lady from Trinidad, who's going to be zooming in. So we want it to be as open as possible to as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very good. And I want to highly recommend that ambassadors program. I was there last year as part of that, and it was extremely helpful. The description here is you're going to be able to access research and seminars from the foremost thinkers combating the sexual revolution on topics such as understanding the global sexual revolution and confronting the sexual state, counting the casualties of the sexual revolution, medical costs of the sexual revolution, demographic winter, and the future of freedom and family. All of these things are so important for us to understand. I'm also going to be there this year as a moderator on a panel, so if you show up, I'm going to be able to see you, which would be a great blessing. But again, ruthinstitute.org. We'll be right back with Dr. Morse.
Prayer in time of affliction. Blessed, O Lord, be thy name forever. Who has permitted this affliction to come upon us? We cannot escape it, but must of necessity fly to thee to help us and turn it to our good. Lord, we are now in affliction. Our souls are ill at ease, for we are much troubled with this present suffering. Let it please thee, O Lord, to deliver us, for poor wretches that we are. What can we do without thee? Thy mighty hand can do all things. Give us patience, O Lord, and strength and peace. Help us, O God, and we will not fear, no matter how grievously we may be afflicted. O Lord, thy will be done. Welcome be the will of God. Sacred Heart of Jesus, we place our trust in thee. Amen.
We offer several ways to view our programming grid, including at our website, thestationofthecross.com, and on our iCatholic Radio app. Just click the menu icon in the top left portion of our app and select the link to our programming grid. That's at thestationofthecross.com and on our free iCatholic Radio app for Android and Apple mobile devices.
With the unquestionably high divorce rate in our country, it comes as a real surprise when people hear that couples who use natural family planning in their marriages have a less than 5% divorce rate. Their marriages tend to be stronger due to improved communication skills that enhance marital intimacy. For information on how you and your spouse can learn natural family planning, see the Couple to Couple League website at www.ccli.org or call 513-471-2000 for classes near you.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here. It is Current Events Wednesday. Our guest today, Dr. Jennifer Roback Morse, founder and president of the Ruth Institute, ruthinstitute.org, and host of the upcoming 4th Annual Summit for Survivors of the Sexual Revolution. This year's theme, Reclaiming the Professions for Life and Family, coming up the weekend of July 16th through 17th. And I noticed the early bird special is still going on. It ends July 6th. Go to ruthinstitute.org. Sign up to be there in person if you can. But if not, at least that virtual option, ruthinstitute.org. Dr. Morse, there are so many lies that have been injected into our culture stemming from the sexual revolution. Can you give a bit of a summary or maybe an example of how the Ruth Institute combats those lies and equips Christians to defend the family and build a civilization of love?
Well, if you look back on the sort of the history of the sexual revolution, I mean, some of them are just real whoppers, Jim. What can I say? The big lie is that the sexual taboos are harmful, and everyone will be better off if we could just do whatever we wanted sexually. We just get rid of the taboos, everything would be fine. The truth is the taboos were doing a lot of work. The taboos were protecting people from certain things or protecting people from sexual abuse. When we see now how difficult it is to actually protect people from sexual abuse, to determine did it really happen, or is she just making it up, or is he just making it up? It's very hard to deal with it in a way that's just for all parties. So to have it be unthinkable that you would be alone with a child, or that you would have sexual thoughts about children, to have that even be thinkable is to open the door for a lot of problems, right? So one of the big lies is that all we got to do is get rid of the taboos and everybody be happy. Just let everybody do whatever they want, and everything will be fine. That's big lie number one. Big lie number two is that all you got to do is have sex with anybody you want, anytime you want, and if you use your contraception correctly, you won't have any problems. And if you do have any problems, they're your own fault, because you didn't use it right, you didn't use it consistently, and if the guy turns out to be a jerk, well, whatever. It's like the real problems that happen are brushed aside and not even considered, not even looked at. So there, throughout the whole history of the sexual revolution, have been these promising sounding things given to us that turn out to be a lie, just false. They turn out to be wrong. And what's happening to us is that because that hasn't ever really been fully confronted, Jim, the lies are getting bigger and bigger, and the level of mistake that people can make, the harms from those mistakes, is getting bigger and bigger. So when I was in college and decided I was going to move in with my boyfriend, that was a big mistake. That cost me a lot, but I did eventually get over it. So now you've got young people saying, I was born in the wrong body. I'm going to amputate healthy body parts. I'm going to scramble my hormones by taking hormones that don't really belong in my body. I'm going to disrupt my normal endocrine system. They aren't going to recover from that when they figure out that it's not working. They're not going to be able to recover from that, And so that's why we've really got to equip ourselves to identify the lies and confront them and speak about it in a manner that is both accurate without being deliberately offensive, right? But to speak about what we have to say in an accurate manner that doesn't give away the farm by using the other guy's terminology, because we find if you use the language that the sexual revolutionaries invent, you're automatically going to lose, because the language is invented to make sure you lose. So you really got to watch that.
Right. Yeah. And I find that to be one of the points of highest value of the Ruth Institute, of the summit that's coming up in mid-July, ruthinstitute.org to sign up for that, learn more about it. But that's one of the big things, right? To actually learn the language. You're focused on that. You're focused on giving out good information that we can win on that battlefront by being accurate about the terminology that we're using. Another battlefront that is a difficult one, if we don't know how to navigate it, is one that is a battle of data, right? The other side is trying to, they bring false data in to try to back up their claims. But on a recent episode of your podcast, the Dr. J Show, Catholic priest and social scientist, Father Dr. Paul Sullins, who will be speaking at the summit coming up. He's going to be speaking on reclaiming the therapeutic professions and correcting the data. I want to play this clip. He's talking here about understanding sexual orientation change efforts. Listen up, here it is.
I could go on and on, but one of the lies that's presented is the idea that persons who are attracted to persons of the same sex are experiencing just a normal variant of the human condition, and that there is no particular problems or difficulties attendant with that, that it leads to a just relationship for all concerned, and that people are born that way and are expressing something that's part of their very makeup. That turns out not to be true either. It turns out that persons who are attracted to persons of the same sex are finding themselves, they're not abandoning themselves if they find their true sexuality, their true ability to relate in a way that can reproduce with someone of the opposite sex. The truth is that if you're attracted to someone of the same sex and you're uncomfortable with that, if you're disturbed by that, if that is troubling to you on moral grounds or on grounds of the quality of your relationship, you can change. You're not stuck. And that's the truth that we really need to communicate to people.
Okay, so a very important truth there, that you can change. You're not stuck. Dr. Morse, your response as you hear this, and maybe a word to the audience a little bit more on Father Dr. Paul Sullins, what a blessing and gift he is, and the good work that he does, bringing us this correct data.
Yes. So he made several factual claims there, right? One of them is that no one's born that way. That has been proven beyond any shadow of a doubt. There's no gay gene. People are not born that way. So there are a number of routes into same-sex attraction and the feeling that you're gay. There are a number of routes into that, but there are also a number of routes out of it. And that whole body of truths never gets talked about because the whole sexual revolutionary ideology is committed to the position that everybody's born that way and nothing can change. So that, first off, that's one claim that he made. The second is that it is possible to change. It is actually possible to change. And he's talking about a study there. That interview is talking about actually multiple studies that have shown people experiencing lasting and satisfying change in their pattern of attraction and behaviors and feelings and lifestyles, that it is possible to change. So that's a second empirical claim that he's making, And when you think about it, Jim, the claim that no one can change is a very strong claim. It actually only takes one counterexample to disprove that claim, right? Just like the claim that women never regret their abortion. Well, come on, it only takes one counterexample to prove that that's not true, that there's something wrong with the whole thing. So, and then the third thing I want to call everybody's attention to, in that clip that you just played, you will notice Father Sullins did not use the word gay. He did not use the word gay as if gay is an essential feature of the person. He talked about persons who are attracted to persons of the same sex. So it's, in Aristotelian terms, in philosophic terms, it's an accident, not an essential, right? It's not of the essence of the person, it's an accidental. It's a contingent fact, not a given fact, right? And so that's a very important instance of this principle you and I were talking about a moment ago, that when you use even to use the word gay is, in a sense, to give away some ground, as if there is such a thing as a gay person, right? But actually, if you look at the science, very seldom do scientific studies talk about gay people. They'll talk about men who have sex with men, because that's measurable, that's identifiable. You can say, oh, that guy had sex with a guy. You know what that is. But when you're asking a question about gay people, what exactly does that mean? It could mean your actions. It could mean your feelings. It could mean your self-identification. It could mean all sorts of things, and it doesn't match up 100%. That whole set of things doesn't match up 100%. So it's a very vague term that is deliberately vague to sort of sweep into one label the person who is deeply ideologically committed and who has a long past of this type of behavior, to sweep them in with a person who may have some doubts about themselves or some questions about themselves or some anxiety about themselves, sweep them all into one bundle, treat them like they're all the same, and say, well, you all were born that way, so give up. That's a very calculated thing to say. And so it's important to not use the terminology that we're being handed by the other side,
Right. Very important distinctions here with Dr. Jennifer Roback Morse, and this is an area that we need to drill down on just a little bit more in Father Sullins' analysis of some data here. One of the studies he did himself. Let's go to the clip and hear about this. We'll get Dr. Morse's response on the other side. Here it is.
Efforts. So persons who expressed thoughts of suicide and then went to sociotherapy were 90% less likely to follow it up by attempting suicide than persons who expressed thoughts of suicide and didn't go to sociotherapy. So going to soci had an enormously beneficial effect on someone's propensity to attempt suicide. And it really concerns me because they're talking about banning a procedure that actually helps, is a great help to sexual minority persons to prevent suicide. I also looked at another study that the data had not actually been analyzed that presented measures of the rates of suicide before and after soci. And in that study, it was a reduction of 88%. So I found about 90%, another study 88% of the persons who had undergone soci they're about 90% less likely to commit suicide. Now, let's think about that. They say, let's ban this because people who go to sociotherapy have more suicidality, but ignore the fact that going to the soci helps them with their suicidality. What I argue in the study is that imagine a study of antidepressants and that says, look, almost everybody who takes antidepressants reports also having depressive symptoms at some time in their life. We should ban antidepressants, and so it will prevent all these depressive symptoms. That absurd logic would lead to all kinds of trouble for people in depression. It would be the exact opposite of what you would want to have happen, but that's the logic that these scholars, so-called, are following. In fact, it's not only false, it's the exact opposite of the truth.
All right, that's Father Paul Sullins. We're going to get Dr. Morse's response on the other side of the break. We hear the music coming in here, but just understand this. When he is talking there, making many very, very important points that I'm sure Dr. Morse will speak to, but one point I just want to make here is just in terminology, you hear him talking about sociotherapy. This is an important term to understand. It's SOCE, an acronym for let's see, sexual orientation change efforts. There it is, sexual orientation change efforts. Sometimes it's been called reparative therapy. Sometimes it's been called conversion therapy. That actually plays into the other side if we use that term. We can talk about this a little bit on the other side as well, the other side of this break when we get back. But go to ruthinstitute.org. In the meantime, we'll be right back.
If you're looking to make the most out of what you can donate to Catholic Radio, making a transfer of stock is a great opportunity for your giving to go even further in support of the Station of the Cross Catholic Radio Network. Please consider this option in helping us spread the gospel message over the airwaves and through mobile devices. Many people donate to charities by gifting stock. There are even substantial tax benefits for donating stock to a charity such as ours. Would you like to learn more about the possibility of gifting stock to the Station of the Cross Catholic Radio Network? Please call us at 1-877-888-6279. That's 1-877-888-6279. You can also visit us online at thestationofthecross.com. That's thestationofthecross.com. Thank you for your support of Catholic Radio. May God bless you and your family.
I didn't take my faith seriously, which probably means I never really got it to begin with. No, I didn't want to give up sin. The reason we sin is because sin is fun. But it's self-love sin. But it's amazing with God's grace how easy trying to not sin it really is.
If you've been away from the Catholic Church for whatever reason, we invite you to take another look. Visit CatholicsComeHome.org today.
30 seconds on the gifts of the Holy Spirit, brought to you by the Station of the Cross. The gift of fear of the Lord is explained in the Catechism of the Catholic Church as the gift that ensures our awe and reverence before God. This type of fear is not of anxiety, but in understanding how much is due to Him for who He is and what He does for us. We read in the book of Deuteronomy, "What does the Lord ask of you but to fear the Lord, to keep the commandments for your own well-being?"
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here. Our guest today is Dr. Jennifer Roback Morse, founder and president of the Ruth Institute, ruthinstitute.org, host of the upcoming 4th Annual Summit for Survivors of the Sexual Revolution. This year's theme, Reclaiming the Professions for Life and Family, coming up July 16th through 17th, ruthinstitute.org. Right before the break, we heard a clip of Father Paul Sullins. He's a priest, but also a social scientist. And he was talking about some very interesting things on a recent episode of the Dr. J Show. And one of those things he was talking about, he was talking about some studies. And I think earlier in the program, he had mentioned this, that there was a study that had come out where they were basically saying how dangerous this sexual orientation change effort therapy was. And the reason why is they were trying to bring forth this data from a study they did where they were asking basically, have you ever thought about suicide? And then have you ever been to the SOCI therapy, the sexual orientation change effort therapy? But they didn't ask them if they had ever thought about suicide before the therapy. They only asked them, have you ever thought about suicide? And then if they said yes, and they had also been to therapy, then they were making the false conclusion, well, okay, see, there it causes suicidal thoughts, and then they just put out that false conclusion. But the fact is that when Father Sullins actually did the research himself and looked at other studies with this factoring in any suicidal thoughts before the therapy, they were able to see that it was actually very impactful in helping people to actually lower their suicidal tendencies. So this is very, very important when those who are proponents of basically transgenderism and the sexual ideology of the left, the culture of relativism, whatever we want to call it, they are trying to do away with this sexual orientation change therapy, change efforts that are really helping people to deal with their trauma and it really helping people. And so this is very, very dangerous. And again, if we really love people, then we want to see the truth on this and just bring the truth to the light. Dr. Morse, what was your response as you were hearing all of that?
So when he was working on this research, when we were talking about it, he was telling me about the data and the study that you just mentioned and so on and so forth. He said, I'm looking at this, I'm breaking it down, and this simple correlation that they're saying, that they're claiming, falls apart when you account for the timing of when you were suicidal and when you took advantage of the sexual orientation change efforts. Okay, so the truth of the matter is that the people who were the most suicidal, the people who were the most distressed, were the most likely to go get therapy. And so then the question is, did the therapy help them or not? What happened after the therapy? And Father Sullins was able to go to the very same data that these people were reporting from and break it down and look at the fact that if you took account of the timing, the people who then the results were just as he described, that if you go to therapy, you're less likely to be suicidal afterwards. So it was very helpful. So you're taking the people who are the most distressed, who are now becoming less likely to have suicidal thoughts and plans and so on. So that is it's a very important result. And this is a very important issue for our theme of reclaiming the professions. He's going to talk about this research in a panel that's called Reclaiming the Therapeutic Professions, because as you mentioned, there is a move all across the country and indeed around the world to ban a so-called sexual, what they call conversion therapy. And they are very derisive about this kind of sexual orientation change effort. They call it pray away the gay, and they have a guy who goes around and talks about how he was tortured at one of these camps. It was trying to make him straight and so on and so forth. We're actually going to have somebody analyze that particular individual's testimony. And you're going to find, if you are there in the room, you are going to find that his testimony is highly, highly suspect. Okay. So if you're a therapist and somebody walks through your door and says, I'm troubled by my sexual orientation and I'd like to work on changing it, therapists are now scared of taking that kind of client because of all of the rhetoric and the legal ramifications and so on around this controversy about whether this kind of therapy should be banned outright. And so it's been a very, very harmful, destructive aspect of the sexual revolution. And really what they're trying to do is to limit people's options. They're basically saying once gay, always gay, and we're saying no way. That's not true. And in that sense, I would say, Jim, it's comparable to the effort to marginalize, criticize, shut down the pregnancy care center movement, right? That in many states now there is a move to say these centers should be basically regulated out of existence. There was a law in California saying that if you run a crisis pregnancy center, you have to refer people for abortions. That kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you and your pro-life followers are very familiar with that. That whole controversy and that whole issue that's going on around the country. But it has the same feature, that the revolutionaries cannot simply come forward and say, we offer you this lifestyle choice. Here it is on the shelf along with this whole menu of lifestyle choices. They talk like that's what they're about. But when it gets right down to it, what they really want to do is shut down the alternative choices. They don't really want women's right to choose abortion. What they really want is for her to choose abortion because we're going to shut down the alternatives, And same way with sexual orientation change efforts. That's the same kind of mentality that's at work there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and they use a lot of scare tactics as well, especially personally to parents, to say, look, your child is gay and your child is transgender, and if you don't accept it, then your child may commit suicide because of what you're doing. You have to accept that this is who they are. I think I heard it at the last summit, actually, the testimony of people saying that they were told, would you rather have a dead daughter or a live son when it came to them trying to push this transgenderism? I'm very excited about having Walt Heyer. Is that how you say his name? Walt Heyer at this next summit. I want to play a quick clip from him, some comments that he has made, a statement he made a few years ago, just to understand a little bit about who he is and how important it is to hear his voice and hear him tell his story. Here it is, Walt Heyer.
I think it's important for us to realize that there is actually nothing good about affirming a young boy 4 years old like my grandma did me. The moment you affirm a child like my grandma did, putting me in a purple chiffon dress and telling me how cute I was, how wonderful I looked, is at the very same moment that you're affirming that young person, you're telling them there's something wrong with them, that you're not right. That is child abuse. We need to begin calling it what it is. It's not affirming a child. It's causing them to be depressed and anxious about who they are. And then we go on to inject hormone blockers into them and begin altering their body. Can we begin to understand today from these discussions how destructive this is to the psyche?
All right. And Walt Heyer, he's an author and public speaker who formerly did identify as transgender. He's the author of several books, and through his website, sexchangeregret.com, he raises public awareness about those who regret their so-called gender change and the tragic consequences suffered as a result. A very important voice. Dr. Morse, thank you for having Walt Heyer come to this upcoming summit. Again, ruthinstitute.org to get more on that summit, to sign up for it. Hopefully you can be there in person, but if not, at least virtually, ruthinstitute.org. But Dr. Morse, what more can you tell us about Walt and the importance of his story being out there?
So he's one of the first people who attempted a sex change. It was in the 1980s that he did this. And as you mentioned, he lived as a woman for a number of years, and at some point realized that the problems he had were not going away, that there were still a whole set of problems that hadn't been addressed by the treatments, the medical interventions that he went through. There's an important word. You don't want to call it medical treatment. It's not a treatment. It's medical interventions, medical procedures, but it's not medicine. It's not really medicine. It's not a treatment for anything. Anyway, he figured out that he had psychological issues that needed to be addressed, and that the attempt to live as a woman had not addressed. And he came back from the brink, and so he's been married to a woman for, 23 or 24 years from this by now, So it's been a lasting change that he has gone through to come back and live as a man. And he's one of the most consistent and mature voices on this subject. And I'm just delighted that we were able to get him to come and tell his story, because it's an extremely, extremely important voice. And, I interviewed him on another episode of the Dr. J Show that will be coming out pretty soon. And I asked him, are the screening procedures any better today than they were when you went through this? Because his position is they should have been asking him questions about his psychology and understanding that he had a personality disorder, that he had a dissociative disorder, and that should have been treated. And so I said, Walt, is it any better today? And he said, oh no, it's much worse. They're fast tracking young people onto these really harmful hormonal treatments that are, as he says, conveying to them that your body is wrong, that there's something wrong with you, and that we have to fix you in your body so that you can finally be comfortable. They're fast-tracking it. They're not looking for other explanations for the child's discomfort or other routes for dealing with the child's discomfort. They're not at all. That's not what's going on at all. So it's very important that Walt be heard. It's very important that you come and hear what Walt has to say. Those of you who may be dealing with issues of gender dysphoria or gender ideology within your family, you're encountering somebody who thinks they're born in the wrong body and need to do something about it. You need to come and hear what Walt has to say.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. RuthInstitute.org to sign up for that summit. Also, you have a press release that came out earlier this month talking current events here. This certainly is one that would apply to what we're talking about. This press release is entitled, "What Impact Will Jenner's Candidacy Have?" Ruth Institute asks. In the opening paragraph, it says, Ruth Institute President Dr. Jennifer Roback Morse, PhD, says the gubernatorial candidacy of Bruce, who calls himself Caitlyn Jenner, is a step toward normalizing transgenderism, the delusion that someone can change their sex by identifying with the opposite sex. Now, there are some conservative outlets, including the Republican Party, that are part of this problem. What is your message to us? How ought we to view this and speak about this?
Well, first of all, if you notice, I think it's important to call him by his correct name, and to use the correct pronouns. Bruce calls himself Caitlyn. Okay, good for him, but this is still Bruce Jenner. This is the 1976 gold medal Olympic winner of the men's decathlon, okay? And we are all supposed to believe that that person who won that Olympic gold medal really was a woman. He just didn't know it. Okay, that's what we're all supposed to believe. Now, the reason this is so significant is that if the people in power can make you say something like that, if they can make you say Bruce Jenner is a woman, they can make you say anything. And that is why you have got to dig your feet into the sand and say, absolutely not. I'm not going to do this. So you can blather on about people's lifestyle preferences and well, whatever they do themselves in their own homes, it's fine. Who am I to judge? You got to let that stuff go, okay? Because that is the Trojan horse. That is, and hiding inside that horse is this other whole truly totalitarian ideology that is demanding that you think the right things, that you say the right things, that you believe the right things. And we can't let that go by.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a very bad sign that that's being pushed even by conservative outlets. Again, the Republican Party in California. I guess they think that politically that's going to be helpful to them, but very dangerous in normalizing it all the more in that way. When we get back, we're going to talk more with Dr. Jennifer Roback Morse, founder and president of the Ruth Institute. But in the meantime, go to the website, ruthinstitute.org. Very important that you sign up for this upcoming 4th Annual Summit for Survivors of the Sexual Revolution, Reclaiming the Professions for Life and Family, coming up July 16th through 17th. Early bird special pricing ends July 6th, so it's a great time to sign up now, ruthinstitute.org. We'll be right back on The Simple Truth. Stay tuned.
This is Franciscan Media's Saint of the Day for June 30th. Today we celebrate the first martyrs of the Church of Rome. Wherever the good news of Jesus was preached, it met the same opposition as Jesus did, and many of those who began to follow him shared his suffering and death. In the year 64, more than half of Rome was destroyed by fire. Blame for the tragedy lay with Emperor Nero, who had part of his palace burned down in order to enlarge it. In turn, he shifted the blame to Christians and ordered them to be arrested and executed. Christians who could be identified were rounded up. Many were tortured. Some were even crucified. Peter and Paul were probably among the victims. According to the historian Tacitus, a great multitude of Christians were put to death because of what he called their hatred of the human race. The testimony of Tacitus, who seems to have viewed all Christians as enemies, suggests they were made the scapegoats for the fire. Although we don't know their identities or even an exact number of how many lost their lives, we honor their heroic sacrifice. The blood of martyrs has always been, and will always be, the seed of Christians. There's more about the saints along with inspiration and Catholic resources at our website, saintoftheday.org. From Franciscan Media, this has been Saint of the Day.
Hello, this is Father Frank Pavone of Priests for Life. In many states, abortionists come in from a different state in order to perform the procedure. One of the ways to reduce or eliminate abortion in a state, therefore, is for the legislature to pass a law that says that abortions done in that state must be done by a doctor who resides within the state. Let's make it as difficult as possible for them to do business. This is Father Frank Pavone, National Director of Priests for Life.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here. Our guest today, Dr. Jennifer Roback Morse, founder, president of the Ruth Institute, ruthinstitute.org. I hope you've been to the website by now, but if you haven't, go there, ruthinstitute.org. And also the host of the upcoming Summit for Survivors of the Sexual Revolution on Reclaiming the Professions for Life and Family. We certainly need that. It's coming up July 16th and 17th. ruthinstitute.org. And the Ruth Institute is all about equipping Christians to defend the family and build a civilization of love. And the reality is that people are hurting and they're being pointed in the wrong direction by this culture, by the popular culture especially, and by, sadly, these professions that have been corrupted at the levels of leadership, and now they're coercive to everybody that's in there, pointing people who are hurting in the wrong direction, and it only causes more pain and destruction. We're talking about Walt Heyer a little bit in the previous segment. I want to go back to him for a moment here and just play a clip of an interview he did about a year ago on the Candace Owens show, and we'll get Dr. Morse's response on the other side. I think it's very instructive, very helpful. Here it is.
This is interesting as a philosophy, the idea that the transgender movement is really a Band-Aid for something else. And many people that find themselves in this trans space are really hurting in a different regard, but they don't have an opportunity to address that hurt, because externally now we have a world that is telling them, yes, 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 this is what you are. It's okay. There's a home here. And anybody that has the audacity to speak up and say, wait, hold on a second. These are big decisions that we're talking about gets attacked. And that's why I say the trans lobby is and I say this like is plausibly the most vicious lobby that is out there right now. They take down reputations. They want your job. If you even ask a question, a simple question, like, should children be transitioning? Is there maybe something else going on here?
Yes. And, you are so right about the Band-Aid. Every single person that I've worked with over the last 10 years, 100% of them can identify the issue, the time, the hurt, the pain, the loss that caused them to not want to be who they are and begin to identify as a different gender. Right. Every last one of them, they can articulate that. They can tell me what happened.
Right.
And so
in that regard, it becomes a mental disorder, which is what I say, and I get killed for this, but it's the same as post-traumatic stress disorder. I mean, something happened to you, and this is how you are dealing with something that happened to you. And unfortunately, we're not able to treat that or to assess that plausibility when you have people that are not allowing it, and a society that culturally is saying no. And it's bizarrely hitched its wagon to the LGBT movement. And I can't figure out what being lesbian or gay, which is really a sexual preference, has anything to do with gender dysphoria.
Well, it doesn't. And the fact of the matter is these individuals, like you say, there's a word for it. It's called comorbidities. And they either have body dysmorphia.
Say this again. I actually don't know this word. Yeah. I love to learn.
Comorbidities, which means that they're identifying them as being gender dysphoric. But underneath that is actually body dysmorphia, dissociative disorder, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia. Some other issue is generated. They've been sexually abused. Something has happened to them, and you are so right to use the word Band-Aid, and because that's all it is. It's a Band-Aid over some hurt, and it's a way to escape, and this is where the dissociation comes in. You don't want to be who you are, so you attempt to become someone else, and you don't want to be who you are because you got hurt. Something happened to you. And every case is different, but so many of them deal with abuse that we can't ignore the fact that these individuals who are struggling deeply need good psychotherapy, but yet the opposition wants to take away the opportunity for the people to have access to psychotherapy, the very thing that would actually help them prevent an unnecessary gender change surgery and hormones that I went through.
Wow.
All right, Dr. Morse, your response.
Well, Walt Heyer knows what he's talking about. That's all we can say, that he absolutely knows what he's talking about. And I think that there were many interesting things in that conversation. One is the issue of what does lesbian and gay have to do with transgenderism? And there is actually open warfare, open rift within the LGBT coalition, where the T's and the L's are in open warfare against each other. And what we should say, how we should think about that as Catholics, is to look at this and to say what the reason those two groups came together in the first place was a common disgust with the human body and its procreative potential, right? I mean, when you really sit down and break it down, Jim, the sexual revolution is in revolt against the human body and the fact that that when we have sex, we might have a baby, and that the baby can make demands on us, that every civilized society accepts that babies have a right to make demands on their parents, and we desire to have sex, but we don't desire all those responsibilities. We are in open revolt against our bodies, and that's what the sexual revolution is at its core really all about. And that's why you can't compromise with them. You cannot make nice with people who are at war with the human body. Mm-hmm. Just can't do it.
Yeah, and I want to encourage people. Walt Heyer's website, again, is sexchangeregret.com. And, this whole line of thinking, the idea that, look, we want to authentically love people, right? That's why we want to expose the error here and help people to understand what's really going on, because there's real hurting, there's real trauma taking place, and we want to help people to actually address that. But this very thing is why the Southern Poverty Law Center calls you, the Ruth Institute, a hate group, right? Because you're actually authentically trying to love, right? So this is how the Orwellian language works. So that makes you a hate group. But for those who have never heard of the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, they're actually, they have quite influence on the left. Can you tell folks about it? Who are they?
Well, the Southern Poverty Law Center started as an organization to deal with lynching and the Ku Klux Klan, and at some point they lost their way in the sense that they discovered that their founder, Morris Dees, discovered that you could make a lot of money scaring people, basically scaring rich white liberals into giving them money because there's this continuing threat of the Ku Klux Klan taking over or whatever. So they've really multiplied the concept of a hate group, and they've multiplied the definition of a hate group, and so on. And they've made a lot of money off of, it pays off. That's why they have I think about $500 million in assets, not just their operating budget, but in assets. I mean, think about, you and I running our little organization, we have money in the bank to meet our immediate expenses. We don't have like a big pot of money sitting out there earning interest, sitting out there in an offshore bank account somewhere earning interest. They do, they have like $500 million sitting around earning interest, So, when they say, the Ruth Institute's a hate group and so on, I don't take them seriously, but I have to take the consequences seriously because, we have had our credit card processing shut down by them because of them. We can't participate in the Amazon Smile program. When we went to come up with a new mailing list program, one company refused to do business with us because we were on that list. Unfortunately, many people take them seriously as if their ratings actually meant something. So that's part of the reality that we're dealing with too. The part of the topsy-turvy, misuse of language, double speak, thought control, all of that stuff is in the mix there. And the Southern Poverty Law Center is kind of the mirror image of some of the other things that we're talking about. But one group of people we haven't mentioned, Jim, that I really do want to mention is teachers and educators need to come to this event because they are under a lot of pressure to conform to some things that are simply not true, and we have help for them too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, librarians as well. I noticed the American Librarian Association. I was pulling on that thread a little bit today, and it's just awful what you find when you look into these things. So you got to come to the upcoming annual Summit for the Survivors of the Sexual Revolution, Reclaiming Professions for Life and Family, July 16th through 17th. Go to ruthinstitute.org. Be there physically if you can, but if not, at least virtually. Early bird special ends July 6th. Dr. Morse, thank you so much for being with us today and all the good work you do.
Thanks so much, Jim. Thank you so much for having me. And I'll see you in Lake Charles.
St. Gregory Nazianzen said, "Give